Hi, I'm Michael Hartman,
I'm Naomi Liu.
And I'm Mike Rizzo, and this is OpsCast,
a podcast for marketing ops pros
and RevOps pros.
Created by the MoPros, the #1 community for marketing operations professionals.
Tune in to each episode as we chat with real professionals to help elevate you in your marketing operations career.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com, powered by all the MoPros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartman, joined by today by one of my co-hosts, Mike Rizzo. Happy New Year-ish.
Happy 4-year anniversary.
4-year anniversary. Yes.
We're halfway through the month of the new year of 2025, and we are 100% in on the 4th year of
Fifth year.
OpsCast. My brain is in so many places today.
We're starting year 5 now, right? So
We were starting year 5.
yeah. And if I remember right, you got a birthday that's happening around this time.
Yeah, that'll be tomorrow.
All right.
Tomorrow.
Well, by the time this gets out, it'll be in the past, but that's all right.
That's right.
That's all right. Well, joining Mike and me today to talk about the differences between B2C and B2B marketing operations is Beth Horrigan. Beth has worked across a wide range of industries in her career, most recently with Free Fly Apparel, working in the e-commerce operations group. Prior to that, she worked in e-com operations and user experience for Nespresso. Nice. Before that, she was a digital technologist with Diageo, supporting several brands, and digital marketing manager with the National Guard Bureau. So, Beth, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And happy birthday.
Thanks.
All of the above. All of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah. Well, we could totally derail this and start talking about coffee and espresso machines, but better.
I'm totally refraining. I know. Yeah.
I think when Beth and I talked,
looking at my pods over there that I'm not making right now.
Yeah, I probably wasted like 15 minutes of our 30-minute call when I first talked to Beth about doing this episode. So
I can talk all day too.
Yeah, there you go. Well, let's get started. So I did I don't even know, like 2-second, 5-second rundown of your career. So pretty much got everything, I'm sure. But why don't we, before we get too far into our main topic, could you share a little more about your career journey? And then I know I'm personally like to hear about, as people look back on their career, pivotal moments or people that made an outsized impact on your career trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. I have had a very fun and interesting career, working across a lot of different industries. But I think one of the most pivotal moments, probably the most pivotal moment, is my first digital marketing agency or my first digital marketing job. I studied marketing in college, and my first job out of college was with a small luxury outdoor living spaces company. I was the marketing coordinator, and I did everything from emails or rather mailers and postcards. We barely had a website, to landscape layout design, to taking my boss's dog to physical therapy. So the wide range of things that you could do. It's a job that didn't last very long. And one of my friends was working at a digital agency, and I got a job there. I fell in love with digital marketing almost right away because I was so fascinated by the ability to measure everything right away, basically, and the ability then to make a change based upon the insights that you were able to gather. It sounds silly to say that today, but this is almost 20 years ago. So we were just on the cusp of it. So I just fell in love with it. And again, that was probably the most pivotal moment because I've never left digital marketing, but I've done, every job has been in a different agency, and it's just been a lot of fun. And then speaking about pivotal people, I think everybody on this podcast and everybody listening can say positive and negative pivotal people that they had in their career.
True.
And so
Yeah, I think that's funny. I've asked that question of a number of people. I think you're the first person who's brought up that sad fact. But yes, absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, using that and making sure, okay, if it was like, a bad manager or company or whatever the case is, that you just don't get into that again. And, that can change your trajectory of your career as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know I learned from situations like that, the kind of leader I did not want to be.
Exactly.
So I'm sure Mike Mike, you haven't run into anything like that, have you? Just like, people you'd rather not, we don't need to name names.
Yeah, no naming names.
I won't name names, but certainly have. I think, just to bring it sort of back towards some of the normal or common things that we hear in the market, right? Like you fail often, fail fast, like these kinds of things. Because you learn more from your failures, right? Like I think you learn just as much from situations, if not more, right? I think it accelerates your ability to understand what you value in a career or a role, because careers and jobs are two different sort of things to talk about. It definitely teaches you very quickly, right? What you want out of your working relationships.
Yeah.
No doubt.
That's interesting because so literally earlier today, I was listening to a podcast episode with Adam Grant. If you're familiar with him, and it was about essentially like how the pursuit of culture fit can go wrong, right? And then you lose diversity and stuff. And what I was thinking about it, because I've been a big believer that culture fit was really important when you look for things. But then I thought about it after listening to that, I think really to me it's a values fit, right? The values align as opposed to culture, because culture is sort of in my view, like either intentionally or not, right? Culture is the manifestation of the real values of an organization. And so the signs on the wall don't really mean a whole lot if the actual behaviors that are reinforced and celebrated are not aligned with that. So totally random that I happened to listen to Wall today and you brought that up, but it's been at the top of my mind all day. Or the back of my mind all day today. Well, good. So, you've done a number of things, worked in different places, different industries. I think it's really interesting because you worked in, I guess it's a sort of a quasi-government organization along with for-profit kinds of places as well. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way as you kind of transition from one to the other? And maybe even a little bit about, I'm throwing you a little bit of a curveball here, a little bit about like, how did you, as you were pursuing new ventures, right? How did you take those other lessons that may not be obvious to someone in this new industry? Like, how did you market yourself from, if you will? And then what other ways has it helped you think, along the way to help your career?
Hey everyone, Mike Rizzo here, CEO of MarketingOps.com and co-host of OpsCast. I've got a little secret to share with you, something that's been one of the best kept perks of our community until now. At MarketingOps.com, we've built a hiring program that's changing the game for marketing operations recruitment, and we're finally sharing it with the world. Our community is over 22,000 strong, and within that, we have over 4,400 members who are actively and passively seeking new opportunities. These are seasoned professionals with skills and experience spanning platforms like HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, and so much more. Plus, we can help you fine-tune your outreach, targeting exactly the right candidates by region, years of experience, seniority level, or even agency experience. But here's the real cherry on top. When you hire through our program, your new team member gets a free membership or a virtual ticket to our annual conference. From day one, they're not just stepping into a new role, they're getting access to the training, networking, and support they need to hit the ground running. So if you're ready to unlock this incredible opportunity, it's time to let this secret out. Visit marketingops.com and find your next star teammate today. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep optimizing.
Great questions. I've never, yes, as we talked about, I've worked in a bunch of different industries. I've never worked in the same industry job over job. Every job has been a new industry. And I never really thought about it as something that was a bad thing. I just found a job that I liked, job description that I liked, and a company that I thought was cool or interesting, and went for it. And I think marketing yourself, I think no matter which industry you're in, the same marketing principles apply. And it's the levers that you pull across those industries. For example, at the National Guard, I was a contractor there, and we were working on their support programs, and bringing, awareness to the support programs for guardsmen and families. And we didn't have an advertising budget. So I had just come from a digital agency where we had all of the advertising budget.
I mean, why would you need an advertising budget for your captured audience, right?
Yes, true. We were also getting out the word about it. A lot of people, the new, not a new entity, but essentially an umbrella over these, 7 support programs that we had. And so we, email, website, social, and then conferences. Like we went to conferences all over and did keynotes and demos and, we're at booths and talking to guardsmen as they would walk by saying, hey, do you have a minute? Hey, the amount of no's that I got was incredible. But then moving to Diageo, we obviously had advertising budgets and things like that. But because of the laws in our country, some of which I think are still from prohibition that we haven't gotten rid of, you couldn't sell direct on a brand website. You couldn't sell alcohol direct on a brand website. And so the lever that we had to pull was the conversion basically is how do you get people, aware to buy functionality essentially. And that was the driver. That was like our conversion of people going to that part of it, say, finding a retailer, finding a bar, or restaurant, whatever the case is. And so just pulling those different levers and crafting a message for your audience, legally what you could and couldn't do. And I think it's the same when you go from one industry to the other. You can use examples of things that you've done, problems that you've solved. And, for me now, I've worked in like 5 different industries. And so it's an easy play, or an easier conversation versus going from digital agency and hospitality industry to the military, to, luxury spirits. But as you build that, it becomes very clear that you all do it. And you have the same principles apply, just the levers that you pull will be different.
I think it's interesting, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of the similarities and differences between B2B and B2C operations, but that story you just told about Diageo and the limits on what you could do in terms of, I'll call it your call to action, right? And the conversion, it strikes me as not all that different than what a lot of B2B companies have when it goes from advertising to sale.
Yes, exactly.
How do you tie back what you did as a marketer to some sort of end result, which ultimately is you want people to, the Diageo example, assume you want people to go to a retailer and buy the products. And so you've got this sort of bridge that you have to get, you have to build between that activity, the buyer activity and the activity you did as a marketer. So, I mean, I'm curious, now I'm really throwing you a curveball. Like, how is that something that how is that typically solved in that B2C? I guess it's kind of not direct to consumer, but it's B2C model. Like, how did you measure that?
one of my colleagues actually built a dashboard so we could live time get what. And so each brand site that we had was, individual, but the where to buy site or the map for the where to buy sat in a central repository putting down to all of the brands that Diageo owns. So like Johnny Walker, Don Julio, Kettle One, Smirnoff, Captain Morgan, all the greats, Guinness. And so we were able to track which of those brands people were looking for, where in the country people were looking for them. And so if we were doing a campaign or and sent out an email or something like that, we could start to track within that dashboard of where people were searching.
Oh, okay. So it was a little bit about like surge in activity on something that was, you believe was sort of a step in the path to purchase. Is that a fair way of saying it? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, well, Mike, you were in the ad tech space. I mean, did you deal with that when you were in that space, like as well?
Yeah, a little bit. I was on the ad tech side for more like the technology that helped deploy all of the sort of retargeting and the inventory that was bought across. Like my first start was inventory, otherwise empty spaces, right? For those of us that are MarTech nerds, it's your iframe for better sorts, right? There's an iframe that sits on a website. Someone purchases the rights to be able to like serve an ad into it. And then there's these RTB, real-time bidding activities that happen. And that ad network is spread across, the cookies and all the things, right? To be able to retarget people. So I was kind of in that space. I think back, however many, it was over a decade ago. I think I always questioned, like, how accurate is this? Because, like, you were these, like, when I went from the ad trafficker to the account manager side, there's the, like, just like if you're running Google ads, for those of you that have experience, you're sort of like figuring out which target demos and stuff you want to go after. I've always questioned, like, okay, it says, like, male, female, 30 to 50 car buyer. I think it's what it said. And it was like its own proprietary, like, system. I'm like, really though? How is this actually working?
Yeah. It's interesting. You seem like you're surprised that you just had to say it was a decade ago, Mike. So,
yeah. It was over a decade ago. I just don't remember exactly how long.
Yeah.
So it's changed. The landscape. When I went into the mobile ad tech side of things, that got even more convoluted because targeting got even more specific at that point, right? For the most part. And what's fascinating is that there's many layers there, right? Like sometimes you're serving ads through a game that's a freemium product versus web. Anyway, so wild world. But yeah, so a little bit of that came into my world too. But yeah.
Yes. Okay. Was there anything we didn't cover, Beth, that you wanted to touch on there?
I think one of the things that I did want to mention that once I got to Nespresso and, that was direct consumer e-commerce, you could sell directly. That is when I really started, like, that's when the operations part of my career started. Because we did have access, we had an email team, we had a social team, we had, sales team, we had all teams. And as the main point, managing the website, and that's where not all of our sales, but the majority of the sales were coming through. You could work with a lot of different people to make sure that what's going on the site is, 1, accurate, 2, useful, 3, seamless for the customer to get from point A to point B and then convert. And that involves every single department. And so I think that's really where my operation experience started to rise, I would say.
Gotcha.
I love this. Like I've been saying for
Mike was
so
over there,
long.
like clapping his hands for our listeners.
Like literally clapping as you were saying that for our listeners. Like, yeah. And the reason I love this is, and I'll sort of like try to ask you a little bit more about this, Beth, but I've been saying for a long time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? But when I have the chance, I get to say, B2C has been doing marketing operations for a lot longer than B2B has. They just don't call it that, right? Like generally speaking, they sort of refer to it as all the other names that you were naming off, right? Lifecycle marketers, marketing automation, email marketers, website managers, all this other stuff. Why, like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you say marketing operations isn't like a title or like a common point of discussion in that world? Is it just because it's like evolved from the landscape? I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. This may be a silly response, but I think a separation is to I don't think it's boring, but I think people think that the word operation is boring. And so it's not as creative as marketer or website manager. It doesn't have that kind of marketing creative appeal. But you're coordinating across departments to make sure that things happen. And so you're making sure things operate effectively, and therefore you are in operations.
Yeah.
My word of the day is germane. It is germane to, I already said that. Yeah. They say that because I used it earlier somehow. But I feel like it's germane to your ability to go to market. Modern marketing can't happen without MarTech and marketing operations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think about my first step into the marketing realm was it was my one and really my only B2C experience. And I think, my role was in database marketing, right? Which today would be probably called something different, but it had a heavy bent towards IT, right? And I think in large organizations, that's maybe part of it too. So it's not seen as a marketing thing, it's more of a technology thing only. Although I don't agree with that, but do you think there's a perception?
Agreed.
So, yeah. Just as a total aside, I know I've been helping my mother-in-law dealing with a not to be named cable company who could really use somebody like you, help them with their fucking website. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's been a lovely
experience. It is incredible. It is incredible. Another one of the cool things that I did at Nespresso was user experience, UX, UI. I didn't do the design myself, but managed a lot of that. And Nespresso, owned by Nestle, has obviously different markets, obviously the US market, right, et cetera. And so we had to work with HQ headquarters over in Switzerland a lot. And so I worked with that team, the global team, because we just used a template basically across all the different countries. And it was incredible to see how hard we make it for people sometimes to buy things that we're trying to sell them. And it's not hard to change it. Yeah. But I think a lot of these companies have these legacy, potentially proprietary platforms that they're using that get in the way of so much potential.
Yeah. And can't agree more. Ironically, Hartman, I was live chatting with my cable company just the other day.
It may be the same one. I'm just saying.
I mean, this is literally 3 days ago. My wife's looking at me, will you leave the person alone? Like, come on.
The answer is no,
And
by the way.
I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so where I'm going with this though, Beth, is like, here you are talking about like sort of top of funnel, pre-conversion, why this is so difficult. And then sort of like broadly speaking, the reason why marketing operations and RevOps categorically, if you want to go so far as to call it that, is so germane to everything, is that I'm going to stop using that for all the listeners. I promise that'll be the last time today. Is that my experience was sort of the opposite. So here it is inside of my customer portal. I can go explore new options and it's telling me, oh, there's this price, yet I'm being charged $20 more a month for the thing that is literally advertised as a thing that I can sign up for still. I was like, at least in my logged in environment, don't show me the marketing one. Show me the one that I'm not allowed to have anymore, which is the one that I'm paying for. In reality, I was just giving I was trying to be somewhat polite, but I was trying to illustrate the point with the customer person. Like, hey, your website says something completely different, right? I'm being charged. I feel bad for this person when you think about the RevOps category. How do they know that, right? Like, can they impersonate me? Like, I don't know. But this stuff, Matt, like, so I guess for the listeners, right? When I've said in the past, and Beth, hopefully you agree with this, you have such an incredible opportunity to look across the customer journey and the tech stack that supports every aspect of that. Because in most cases, you have access to most of those tools and most other people don't. And this is your opportunity to like use your curiosity to go like figure out, like, when you have a personal experience like this, if you're chatting with your cable company and you work at one of the cable companies and you're listening to this, go log in your system. Maybe this is a problem. I just experienced myself. I should go see if we have that problem.
I don't want to take us too far down, but this is exactly why I really hate the term internal customers, because my guess is there's some sort of teams internally who are committed to being serving their internal customers well. What they don't say, but what happens often is that means that they're optimizing for people inside the company, not for actual customers. And then you have people have actual customer experiences that are shitty.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big miss. Like, that's one of those things. So when I hear things like, we value our internal customers, I'm like, I don't care. We don't need them. I mean, I understand the sentiment, but I always
absolutely.
Like, ultimately, we all have our jobs at these companies because actual customers are paying us for some sort of service that they get value out of, or in Mike's case, apparently, that they're stuck with.
Yes, apparently I'm just
which is what I'm dealing with. So, but enough said there. Okay, well, I was almost ready to go into this anyway with these things, but one of the things I think we've danced around a little bit here is this notion that there's probably more commonality between B2B and B2C marketing and marketing operations than there is differences. And I think what triggered you ending up here on this is that you, I think, had read the 2024 State of the MoPro report, and I think you were struck as more of a B2C person with some exposure to B2B. Yeah, how many of the things that were top of mind for B2B marketing ops folks were also things that B2C people were dealing with? So maybe talk a little bit about, what were some of those things that stood out to you and why? And if you've got examples of like what that really looks like on a B2C side, I would love to hear those as well.
Absolutely. So when I read the report a couple of times. It's really interesting, which is why I read it a couple of times. But I kept having to remind myself that it was B2B people that were responding to this, because, like you just said, there are so many similarities between the two. And there was one section where I think people who are taking the survey that went into the study They could write in responses of things that are, requirements of their jobs or whatever the case is. And I'd have a whole list. So it's like web management, project management, campaign management, strategy, budget, AI innovation, like all of those things we're doing on B2C too, on the B2C side as well. Web management, you've got to be able to coordinate with, in addition to developers and various things like that, you've got to be able to coordinate with the brand team and the creative team to make sure that what you're putting up on the site is correct. You've got to coordinate with the sales team to make sure that the promos are correct, the product team for making sure that all the details about the product is correct. I think when you get into vendor and IT management too, we have different platforms that you can use for managing a site. And so negotiating contracts with them and making sure that you have the budget. And then if you have 2 or 3 different tools that you're using, how do they all work together? We got to make sure that they all can work together so that we're not just spending money to spend money and then can't actually use the thing you just paid a ton of money. And then I think this, AI innovation, we've all been using AI for a very long time. People have been calling it that necessarily, but we have been. But it's only going to get more and more involved. And even within the AI model, you have to use a couple different ones sometimes in order to get to a response. So I think, from a B2B, B2C side, there's a lot of similarities between what, y'all are working on and what we are.
I could not agree more. I keep advocating for more and more B2C folks. I mean, honestly, like I don't want to say the whole team, but a good amount of individuals from Forwrd and Hyatt and a number of other B2C companies came to Mopsapalooza this year, and many of them walked up to me and were like, love this, love everything everybody's talking about. How do we get more B2C people here? Right? Like we need to talk more about this stuff categorically and get more of these folks in the room. And I'm like, yeah, like, let's do it. We need that. And really selfishly for the sake of the betterment of all of us in the community, we need to learn from the B2C folks who are dealing with a really quite complex, like customer journeys and data set. Their data models and data sets are just larger.
So the volume of data in the B2C world is, like, I don't even know what the right multiple is, but it's greater than 10x, I think, in most cases.
Yeah. So anyway, I couldn't agree more. But to the point of all of these things that we're all trying to wrap our arms around in this role, call it marketing automation, lifecycle marketer, marketing operations, RevOps, whatever. Part of the reason we want everybody in here is to also say, hey, like, let's put some guardrails in place. Let's try to be cautious of like, how much is too much? At what point do you need to appoint a specialist into a very specific part of the tech stack? And what is that sort of threshold? And what are the limitations? And how do we make sure you get paid for the value that you bring to the organization and all that stuff, right? So this is like, yes, we want everybody to learn from each other, but simultaneously we want to publish material, much like we do in the marketing, the State of the MoPro report, to try to educate executive leaders and other managers and board members of like, no, you cannot just throw everything to this one magical unicorn person that yes, can figure it out, but like, that's not fair.
Right.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. So I will reiterate it, but I will say agreed wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think even if like I think there's a real benefit to, even though there are going to be nuances and things that are different, right? So maybe the specific technologies are different, or the specific needs for reporting and analytics are different. Like even to like just in our conversation today, I had that sort of epiphany that there's an analog in the B2B marketing analytics space of trying to tie marketing activity to, call it revenue or, benefit, to what you're dealing with, where there's a similar challenge that's happening in the B2C world if you're not particularly if you're not direct to consumer. And I'm like, well, maybe there's ideas that could be shared where, okay, we figured this out. This is how we do it in the B2C world when we're not direct to consumer, that maybe you could apply to what you're doing in a B2B space and vice versa, right?
Absolutely. And I think also that magical unicorn that you were talking about, Mike, if you are one of those people, you're gonna figure it out. Even if you've never worked with the Forwrd before or you've never heard of it, you can figure it out and figure out if it works or if it doesn't work, or everything. I think for marketing operations, people are quote unquote figure outable.
Yeah, people who give a shit and are curious and want to make things successful. So it's kind of the DNA.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think for listeners, we are all advocating and encouraging you to say you are absolutely capable. Like, you probably know that about yourself, but if you need someone to tell you, you are 100% capable of figuring stuff out. But I think in the event that you have a manager friend that you've ever worked with or has ever questioned what this role is all about, send them this episode. And then I am telling them right now, the next time you are trying to hire someone, don't be like, you have to have 5 years of Marketo experience or whatever the frick. Like, please. Yes, I totally get it. Okay. I run an organization now. I get the speed and efficiency and like the ramp up time. All those things are important. I totally understand. You want to hit the ground running, no crawling, walking, and running, right? But also this is one of those roles where if you give somebody a chance, I'll die on the hill of they'll probably stay at your company for longer because you gave them a chance and then they got deeply entrenched into the excitement of your business. And as long as your culture is a good fit, they'll probably hang around. So give somebody else a chance that doesn't have the experience because they're going to be curious enough to go figure that out.
Yeah.
The way I've thought about it as when I've hired is I will hire for attitude over aptitude just about any time, assuming there's a minimum level of aptitude. So if I got people with the right attitude who can learn and are coachable and want to achieve and are willing to try stuff and know that they're not, I'm the kind of leader where I'm not going to hold it. Like if they do something intentionally bad, right, that's a different thing. But if they make a mistake, right, that's a learning opportunity. And I think that it's funny. I'm going to go back to that Adam Grant episode I just listened to, had a similar thing talking about how job descriptions are so bad at describing like all these aptitude things as opposed to attitude things and tying them back to values or culture, depending on how you want to use them at the organization. And there was somebody on there, I can't remember who the guest was, who said, really, you should be looking for people who match that more than the aptitude. Do you need people that meet a certain threshold? Absolutely. But once you get past that certain threshold, it kind of doesn't matter.
Well, and I think it can be a positive thing versus somebody that, this is how I've always used this tool. This is the way that I did it at my last job. This is the way that you should be doing it. And then if you have somebody that is learning it for the first time, it's fresh eyes on it. And the implementations it can be so much more fruitful if somebody is learning it for the first time. And sourcing help from other marketing, operations professionals that have used that before, and no matter what the industry, because then they can take those experiences and apply it to, what their company is or whatever the case is. So I would be, sure, like you're saying, minimum of experience, but
yeah. Well, okay. So we talked about things that are common, right? What do you see whether they should be or not, right? Things that seem to be unique to B2C and B2B, that like where there are differences today.
This is a fun one, I think, because it really just comes back to marketing principles and how you're talking to the customer that you're trying to sell to. So, on a B2C basis, you're selling a product or a service to more, an individual person. And so you want to create that emotional connection or emotional need with the product or service that you're trying to sell. And so you're pulling on the heartstrings of an individual versus B2B, you're trying to justify the ROI of selling something in. You're trying to, educate the potential customer on how it will help your resource management or whatever the case is. So that is very fact-based. So you're pulling more on a headstring versus the heartstrings of B2C.
Love that.
Yeah. Again, it's just who you're talking, like who's your demographic and how are they going to respond? I think that there are instances where you could pull on the heartstrings with B2B and vice versa with B2C. But for the most part, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
And what that difference is.
I think there's a lot of B2B marketing that I don't know how to put it other than it's a little too buttoned up. Right. And I think there's room to be. I think there should be people who are more willing to realize that ultimately there's going to be some other business entity that's where the check's going to come from for whatever they buy. But at the end of the day, it's individual people who are making the decisions. And yes, you might think they're going to be more rational than an individual person, but I actually don't think that's true. I mean, this is the whole reason why behavioral economics is around, is because people weren't behaving rationally. Right? So, at an individual level. So, I mean, do you think there should be a little more, like, should these things be more alike in B2B and B2C worlds, do you think?
I think it comes down to who your audience is. And if you're trying to get to know your audience, it's just like, what's your target demo? Like if I'm trying to sell, a spa day to somebody, that's going to be very different than if I'm trying to sell a triathlon or like a Spartan race or something like that. You're going to approach that with two totally different messages and, creative and all of those different things. And so I think that I don't think it's a problem that they're different, because I think it's just the marketing principle of how are you communicating with your target audience. But to what you said about B2B being more buttoned up, I think there can be a little bit more fun and injected and creativity injected into those types of messages.
Yeah, I think too many people in B2B take themselves too seriously,
Well, they do in B2C as well.
Oh, they do. Okay.
That's not different. That is the common theme.
I've always been so excited by the levers you get to pull on in the B2C landscape versus the B2B. I think B2B marketing is way, way harder. Just because you just have fewer elements to leverage, I guess. I don't want to pretend like that's the best way I can describe it. For those of you who get offended by that, I'm sorry. That I just think it's more difficult. Like you have like more complex buying cycles that take longer, and you have less of the decision criteria is far more complex. Usually there's a stakeholder committee that's trying to buy half of the things that you're selling. And so I think that creates a more complex buyer journey and stuff like that. And I always enjoyed the nature or the fantasy of what it must be like to be a B2B marketer, even though that's complex. I've never really done a ton of it. I've done little bits here and there, but.
Well, and the cost of what you're selling too.
Yeah.
Like a shirt. It's for all intents and purposes for this conversation, sure is easier to sell than B2B solution.
Yeah.
You know, that's a much shorter
$50,000 software purchase versus a, whatever, call it a $50 for
whatever. Yeah. Whatever.
Well, the downside of a mistake is, or the cost of a mistake is much lower, right? So, okay, so it's interesting, Sarah. You said that you think there should be a little difference. Maybe there's some overlap, but so one of the things that, and this, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think maybe it was Chris Willis. Like, somebody posted on LinkedIn not too long ago something that really caught my attention, which was essentially was saying that, if you go back to classical marketing training, right, you get the 4 Ps, right? And really most marketing teams are focusing on just one these days, right? The promotion piece. And I'm curious if you're seeing anything, like, are you seeing, again, it's like similarities or differences in the B2C world where you've been? Are you seeing more focus on just promotion and less about, I can't remember if I can remember all the 4 Ps evenly. So it's product, placement, pricing, promotion, right? Did I get them right? All right. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, seeing the same thing in B2C across a couple of the companies that I've worked for. And I think there's always going to be a tension of, okay, you set your price and then you have the promotion for it. When do you pull, a percentage off or a buy one, get one or something like that? When do you go with that? And there's always going to be the tension between that. I think a lot of, in the experience that I've had, the conversations and that tension is between, are we training our customers to be on, that we're always going to be on promotion? And so they're not going to buy something at full price. Okay, that's not good that you're training your customers to wait for a discount. But then it also could potentially erode the customer loyalty in terms of, well, why are they always on sale? Is there something wrong with the product? Why aren't people buying it on full price? Like, why, And so I think that there's in terms of those purchases for the customers, there could be some erosion of that brand affinity if you are always in promotion. Now, I know that anybody that's listening in on finance team or sales team or something like that, there are two sides to that coin. And so I think that that's where it comes in, again, with the operation of, and looking at data and saying, okay, well, in that month with this percentage off over the last 4 years, these are the results that we've gotten. If we add in another promotion the month before, are we just robbing Peter to pay Paul, or is there actually going to be incremental revenue to?
Yeah. It's we have a unique environment at marketingops.com in that we have partners that support us and sponsor us, our community, right? And then we've got a membership model and we've got tickets and so in some ways there's this concept of B2C happening, and I've often brought those things up, right? Where it's like, oh, if we I don't know, run a discount for membership, or we run a discount for the tickets to Mopsapalooza or whatever, people are just always going to expect that thing, right? And when I was at an agency, we were selling shirts for one of these shirt brands out there. They're literally it was every other weekend. It was every other weekend there was a promo email that was going out and all that stuff. And what's fascinating is that I think the ecosystem adapted, the MarTech ecosystem adapted, and they're like, oh, what'll solve this? Loyalty programs. Now you can be always on promotion, but then have loyalty and get them to come back. And then it's okay, now we're not robbing Pete for Paul and all this other stuff.
The loyalty is a free shipping threshold and promise delivery. So Amazon.
Yeah. Totally. Right.
Well, I can think of at least one other brand where I'm loyal because I get consistent deals push to me. And I don't go there all that often, but I go there often enough where it's like, it's worth it for me to trade off, like letting them, and because I know, like I'm sharing a whole bunch of data about me, what I care about. But it's like, I know that I, air quotes, right, save a bunch of money over the course of a year by doing that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely do. I have, having been in B2B for my entire career, basically, B2B SaaS at that, I've always, like, and this will be for another day, right? Another episode maybe. But I've always like been fascinated. Like, how do you create a loyalty program for B2B business? Like, how does that happen? Because it's actually quite complex to, like the renewal cycles and all that other stuff. And then like the gamification models that go into the usage of the product. And I think we're starting to see more of that now with the usage-based type of, at least in the SaaS side of things. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I think actually the way that was done or has been done well is through community, right? So you get your most engaged customers to be your own advocates. And by the way, they also provide support. So you don't have as many support people. So, and I think about that with, all the big, marketing automation platforms have that. Like
it's just, no, I agree with you. I think, we saw companies like Influitive kind of do this like crazy blip for a while, right? Where they were like this huge $10 million, whatever entity, and influencer marketing kind of was like happening at the same time on the B2C side. And so, but what's interesting about the concept of loyalty, gamification, and pricing structures in that world, when you're thinking about like that community referral, customer marketing kind of stuff, is that, like, to your point earlier, Beth, right? The pulling on the heartstrings versus the headstrings thing. It's unintuitive for you as an employee to feel compelled to use a B2B product in service of benefiting your organization. And so what I mean by that is, like, if I were to build a true loyalty program, I would say things like, oh, if you, hit this certain threshold of usage, we're going to guarantee you $500 off your next seat that you add. Right. Yeah. But the thing is like the person doesn't care what the company gets. What?
Yeah.
Right. And so like that sense of gamification doesn't, like, it just doesn't, those two things don't work together. And so I've always been challenged, like, how do you do that instrumentation, but that benefits the organization and the individual? And it's not like Influitive, which was an interesting product, but like, oh, cool, HubSpot says I need to go like share this blog post and like retweet this thing because I was in their marketplace, right? Their HubStars thing back in the day. I was like their top advocate. I got like a bunch of gift cards, right? Because I was constantly doing the things. And eventually I was kind of like over it. But like, and so really it benefited them and it benefited me, but it did nothing for my company. And so again, you're like, you're not actually supporting, it's not like my company got a benefit of me spending my time championing the product that I loved.
It's complex.
Random tangent. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was just, I think the intersections of these worlds in MarTech and how they're all supporting these go-to-market motions is fascinating.
Yeah.
You know who could solve it? A marketing operation unicorn. Probably.
There you go.
That's true.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a good place as any for us to wrap up. And actually, we need to wrap up. So, Beth, thank you so much. It's been great. I've enjoyed this conversation. I've learned some stuff. I'm sure our audience will be benefiting from it as well. But if folks want to, learn more from you or keep up with what you're doing or talking about, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn. Good old LinkedIn.
All right. LinkedIn it is. Like, I don't even think I should ask this question anymore. I think it's me. That's actually not true. We do have guests who.
There are some others.
Yeah. So, well, again, thank you, Beth. Mike, always great to have you along as well. Thanks to our listeners out there for continuing to support us and coming up with ideas and suggestions and guests. If you are interested in being a guest or have a suggestion, please reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we'd be happy to chat with you about that and keeping things moving. Until next time, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. See ya.